Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We've had some exciting weeks in college football this year, but none have been more important or as exciting than this week's slate of conference championship games that will finalize the playoff picture and potentially send the committee into chaos. So we're going to break down our top 6 conference championship games starting Friday with the Pac-12 championship game and then into Saturday where we're going to list our top 5 games and share our predictions and show how important these games are and what could happen if a certain team wins or loses and how that could affect the playoff picture when the final rankings are released on Sunday. So we're going to break down our top 6 games. And before we begin, I would like to mention one thing. A lot of people look at these playoff games and Stanford, USC, Memphis, Central Florida, TCU, Oklahoma, and Georgia and Auburn have all met once this season. They've met once before, and each one of those games have been blowouts. But things can change over the course of as short as 3 weeks. If you look at the Georgia-Auburn game, anything can change over the course of an entire season. Central Florida, Memphis play much earlier in the season or within a few weeks. So, it's not right to say, well, Auburn beat Georgia 40-17 3 weeks ago, they're going to kill them again. That's not the case. Same with Oklahoma and TCU and Stanford and USC. So anything's possible. Things can change. Teams make adjustments. Teams start to find their stride, especially in the case of Stanford and Memphis. So let's not overlook those games. Anything can happen on conference championship week. So just because a team beat someone really bad early in the season does not mean that's going to happen again. So we're going to start with our first game in the Pac-12 championship between number 12 Stanford and number 10 USC. Now, like I said, USC defeated Stanford pretty good early in the season, and a lot of people have kind of forgotten about USC. They dealt with that horrible loss to Notre Dame, a blowout loss, and that kind of put them out of the playoff picture. They've kind of crept back up into the top 10. They were stagnant at number 11 for a little while for the first couple of rankings. They're out of the playoff picture in my eyes. Even if they defeat Stanford really bad like they did earlier in the year, I don't think they're going to be able to jump 6 spots and get into the college football playoff, especially since they would beat a number 12 Stanford team that's ranked below them, has a worse record than them. In my opinion, I like USC in this game, but the key is going to have to be to stop Stanford and Bryce Love in the running game. Sam Darnold, though, is playing some great football. Like I said, they've kind of been quiet, sneaking back up in there. The winner of this game goes to the Fiesta Bowl, so there's a lot to play for, a big New Year's Six game. And of course, winning a conference championship. That's always a big deal, whether you're going to the college football playoff or not. But right now, I'm picking USC in this one. I think Sam Darnold is going to start off slow, but ends up having a pretty good day against a good Cardinal defense. Bryce Love's going to have to get something going on the ground, though, if they want to beat the Trojans. I don't think it's going to happen. I like USC in this one. Number 20, Memphis, and number 14, UCF in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. Now, this is a very, very intriguing matchup. Of course, as we all know, the stakes are high because the winner of this game will be the Group of 5 representative in a New Year's Six bowl game. So right there is enough to get you excited, even if you're not a Memphis fan or a Central Florida fan. But also we've got 2 of the best coaches, 2 of the hottest names in the coaching carousel right now. We've got Scott Frost at Central Florida, who's becoming the lead candidate in Nebraska right now. And then Mike Norvell, who is being thrown around for a bunch of bigger schools, potentially in the SEC. I know Arkansas might be pursuing him right now. So we've got 2 great head coaches going at it that could potentially be leaving these 2 schools. And then we've got 2 great quarterbacks with Riley Ferguson at Memphis and then Mackenzie Milton at Central Florida. So I expect a very good shootout, an offensive battle. If you remember, Central Florida took easy care of Memphis earlier in the season, but that was much earlier. Memphis has found their stride since then. I like UCF in this one, though. They're undefeated. They know what they've got to do. They won a thriller last week against South Florida. Memphis defeating East Carolina fairly easily. But I think it's going to be a big shootout, but Central Florida gets the win, and another close one. I just think their offense is going to be too much for them, and I think they know that the stakes are very high. Memphis will too, but to finish that season 12-0 and get to a New Year's Six bowl, something that is not uncommon for Central Florida, I think that's going to be a little too much. And keep in mind they have home field advantage. Crowd's going to be crazy. I like the Knights in this one. And then number 11, TCU, and number 3, Oklahoma. Now, this is a game that's very intriguing as well. A lot of people just kind of write this one off. Oklahoma defeated TCU very early, not too early in the season, beat them handily. They got Baker Mayfield. They're not going to lose to TCU, right? And Oklahoma has a lot more to play for than TCU in this game. Yes, a Big 12 championship would be nice for the Horned Frogs, but they're not going to make the college football playoff. I don't think that's possible for the Horned Frogs. Even if they defeat Oklahoma, if they do beat them, I don't see them winning by more than 10 points. If that's the case, that's not going to be enough to propel them 7 spots into the 4th spot, assuming one of the top 4 teams loses. Oklahoma, of course, is favored in this game, but they've got a lot to play for. They can't afford to slip up here. If they do, they're out, and that would benefit teams like Alabama, who's trying to fight their way back in, sitting at number 5 in the country. I like Oklahoma in this one, though. I think Baker Mayfield is going to be too much. It's going to be another fun quarterback battle between Kenny Hill and Baker Mayfield. But I think the Oklahoma offense is going to be a little too much for that TCU defense, who's been exploited recently, got picked apart by a freshman quarterback at Baylor. So I think Oklahoma is going to be able to have a decent field day in the early Big 12 game on Saturday. And keep in mind, they have a lot more to play for. They know the stakes are high. If they win, they're in. I think it's going to be enough motivation for them to get the win over the Horned Frogs. But keep in mind, Horned Frogs are a very decent team, very dangerous team. And if their defense steps up and causes trouble for Baker Mayfield, they might be able to hang in there a lot longer than we expect. And then I think this is probably the biggest game of the entire conference championship Saturday. Number 6 Georgia, number 2 Auburn, a rematch of that 40-17 defeat Georgia had a couple weeks ago, and a lot of people are writing that off. Like I said, Auburn won 40-17, they're going to win again. Not the case. Like I said, things can happen. Georgia, I think Jake Fromm has developed a little bit since that. I think that was a wake-up call for the Bulldogs. He has developed as a passer, and they want to defeat this Auburn team. And I think he has developed a little bit. We know they have a great rushing game. You got Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, solid running backs. If they can, have their way against an Auburn defense, it was very, very tough, who held Alabama to a pretty poor day running the ball last week. I think Georgia's going to be all right. Now, for Auburn, their defense has been their strength, no doubt. I mean, shutting down Alabama, shutting down Georgia, that's been very impressive. They have injuries at the running back position, though. Kerryon Johnson, they say, is going to play, or more than likely will play, but he has been dealing with injury, and that is a cause of concern because if he is out, they're going to have to rely heavily on Jarrett Stidham, who, like I said, has been playing some good football, but that's going to make it easier for the Georgia defense to know all we have to do is shut down the pass. They don't have the dangerous running backs that we had to deal with just a few weeks ago. I like Auburn in this one, in a very, very close one. Nothing like that 40-17 loss that Georgia had a few weeks ago. I think it's going to come down to the wire. The game's in Atlanta. Not saying that's going to give Georgia an edge. There's going to be plenty of Auburn fans there as well, but at least it's not a pure road game like Georgia had a few weeks ago. Expect a close battle. Expect some good quarterback battles here. Jake Fromm's going to have a better day than he did a few weeks ago when they lost on the road. And then Clemson and Miami here, number 7 versus number 1. Clemson, there's some people are making a case that if Clemson loses a close game to Miami here, 1 point, game-winning field goal, losing by 1 to 3, 1 to 10 points, probably not 10, probably 1 to 3, that they could potentially stay in the top 4 because they're number 1 team in the country, and they lose to a Miami team who's 7th. And I disagree with that. That would give Clemson 2 losses. 1 loss was to Syracuse, who's obviously very poor this year. I think they finished the season 4-8. Clemente has not put much emphasis on that because they remember that Kelly Bryant injury. I don't think Clemson's going to have to worry about that, though. I think they're going to get the win over Miami, who's dealing with some wide receiver injuries. If I remember correctly, they have lost their 2nd and 3rd leading receiver this year, and that's going to make it tough for Malik Rozier to, find some open receivers and some talented receivers for that Hurricane offense, who struggled mightily against the Pittsburgh team last week, got upset, and that's why they're 7th right now. This game had the works to be probably the biggest out of this day. Had Miami won, it could have been a potential number 1 versus number 2 game. But Miami needs this game to get into the playoff. Clemson, I think if they lose, they're out. Miami wins, they're in. The winner of this stays, the loser is out, in my opinion. And that's kind of the case with the Auburn-Georgia game as well. The winner of that goes. The loser is out, in my opinion. Oklahoma has to win to get in. TCU, I think, is out of this. So these 3 games right here are going to be huge for Oklahoma, Auburn, and Clemson if they want to stay in the top 4. But Georgia and Miami are knocking on the door. A win for those 2 teams, I think, sends them into the top 4. And then number 8, Ohio State versus number 4, Wisconsin. This is the game that I think Alabama fans are going to watch the closest here. You've got J.T. Barrett, who's been dealing with an injury after a bizarre collision with the cameraman before the Michigan game. He got replaced late in that game. And so whether or not he's going to start is going to decide kind of how I pick this game. Right now, I am leaning towards the Buckeyes a little bit. But if J.T. Barrett is out, I think Wisconsin holds an edge there. And Wisconsin is trying to prove to the nation that they are worthy of finishing in that top 4. They're undefeated, but everybody keeps commenting about how weak their schedule has been. They really haven't played anybody tough. And if you remember just a few years ago, Ohio State came to this game, beat Wisconsin 59-0, was able to slip into the playoff as the 4th seed, and we know the rest is history. They won the national championship, and that was with Cardale Jones, who replaced an injured J.T. Barrett. So this game is going to come down, of course, to the rushing game for Wisconsin. Jonathan Taylor, they're going to lean heavily on him. Alex Hornibrook's done good there, and they can limit turnovers. Wisconsin's going to have a solid shot at winning this game against the Buckeyes. Ohio State's going to come down to quarterback play. If J.T. Barrett's healthy, I think they have a solid shot. Ohio State is actually favored in this game, despite being ranked lower. But I think that could change if JT Barrett doesn't play. We're going to have to wait and find out. But this game, huge for Alabama fans. I think if Ohio State wins, there's going to be that controversy there. Does a 2-loss Ohio State get in, or does Alabama, a 1-loss non-conference champion, get in? And that's going to be something the committee has to decide. If you saw my last video, I made the comment about the Penn State team from last year, how they won the Big Ten championship, yet did not make the playoff. Ohio State did. It would kind of be the same situation. Ohio State's a 2-loss team who would win the Big Ten championship game, but will they get in over a 1-loss Alabama, whose 1 loss is the number 2 Auburn? And that's something the committee's going to figure out. I think Alabama should get in. I do not think Ohio State get in, because I think that Iowa loss, a 31-point loss to a 7-5 team, should weigh very heavily against their favor. But I think the committee is trying to overlook that a little bit, just like they're doing for that Syracuse loss or for Clemson. And we're just going to have to wait and find out. But Alabama's definitely rooting for Ohio State in this game. I like them for now. If JT Barrett's out, I'm going to change my pick to Wisconsin to finish in the top 4. So a very exciting week of conference championship games. The top 4 teams of the country facing very, very tough teams here, and I guarantee you, I think one of them is going to lose. If I had to choose one that would be more likely, I think it would be Georgia over Auburn. I think that would be the biggest upset, or the potential upset for a top 4 team to lose. I think Georgia has just the most talent out of all these. I don't think TCU is going to be able to stop Baker Mayfield. I think Miami's wide receivers are going to hurt them. And then Ohio State, we always have that quarterback injury. So it's going to be Georgia or Ohio State that upsets one of the top 4 teams in the country. If the top 4 all win, your playoffs are set. If a couple of them lose, or just one of them lose, it's going to be sent into chaos, and the committee's going to have some tough decisions on who to put in to the top 4. And, of course, we will know that answer on Sunday when we release our final 4 teams, and all the bowl games will be released as well. We'll have a video for that on Sunday, so make sure you keep your eye out for that. Enjoy these conference championship games. It's going to be a chaotic weekend, so make sure you watch those, enjoy those. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.